Today I'm going to be doing a sports history kind of little lesson thing. So I'm going to start it off with one of my favorite sports. It is my favorite sport, hockey. So I'm going to be talking about the 1996 Stanley Cup Finals. Now this was way back before I was born. So this was a long time ago, but it's one of my favorite Stanley Cup Finals ever. Not because it featured one of my favorite teams. One of my favorite players was in this, but just because of how the last game of this series ended. So, the finals included the Colorado Avalanche and the Florida Panthers. Both of these teams were really new to the league. In fact, this was the Avalanche first season in the NHL. So their team, instead of being an expansion team, which means they get to pick from all the players in the other teams, their team got moved from Quebec, which is in Canada, to Colorado to play because they weren't making very much money up in Quebec, so they moved them to Colorado to maybe get some more money. Florida, on the other hand, became a team in 1993, and they were an expansion team, so they got to pick players from other teams who the other teams didn't really want anymore. So these were two very new teams playing for the Stanley Cup, and it was very exciting. So usually expansion teams like the Panthers aren't very good for their first couple of years just because you get kind of the second choice players, have to build your own team. However, Panthers made the playoffs their first two seasons as a franchise, and 1995-1996 season was their second season, my bad. And this was mostly because of their goalie. Now, they had pretty good forwards and okay defensemen. They could keep it out of the net. But their goalie is one of the most underrated goalies of all time, in my opinion. His name is kind of weird. His nickname was the Beezer, and he had bees on the back of his helmet. And his name was John Van Wiesbrook, who during the playoffs, when they went to the Stanley Cup, saved 93% of the shots that were shot at him, and he only let in about 2 goals per game. That's really good. In terms of, because you're going up against some of the best players in the world, especially when you're in the playoffs, and he's still saved 93% of it. So this team, like I said, played very defensively. Like their scorers, only had about 17 goals throughout the whole playoffs, which is about 22 games for them. And so to get to the playoffs, they were the 4th seed out of 8, and so they had to go up against the 5th seed, Boston Bruins, who they beat in 5 games. And they had to play the best team in the playoffs on the Eastern Conference, the Philadelphia Flyers. And they surprisingly beat them in 6 games. So they won 4 games and only lost 2 games to one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. And then to get to the Stanley Cup, they had to face the second best team, the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they took them to 7 games, so the full series. And they ended up beating them in 7 games. Now, we'll put the Panthers aside for a while. We'll talk a little bit about the Avalanche. So, the Avalanche, as I said, they just moved from Quebec, brand new to their city. They started the year off. They were doing okay. They had a goaltending issue. Their goalie wasn't very good. And then someone by the name of Patrick Waugh, who played for the Montreal Canadiens, demanded a trade away from the Canadiens. So they traded for him, and then they had their star, their franchise star. Patrick Waugh is one of the top 5 goalies of all time. He's notorious for a ton of stuff that he did on the ice and off the ice. And they also had a lethal forward core. They had Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg, who were 2 of the best scoring forwards to ever play. They also had a very good defensive unit who played well together. No matter where you put them in the lineup, they would play well together. They kept pucks out of the net, and that was helped by Patrick Waugh playing with them. And so, moving on, they got to the finals. They were the 2 seed in the West. So they were already one of the top 2 teams. So they were very highly touted. And they beat Vancouver, who was the 7 seed, the Vancouver Canucks, in 6 games. And they beat the 4 seed Chicago Blackhawks in 6 games. Blackhawks were pretty good that year. They didn't have many stars. Vancouver was the same thing. Didn't really have any amazing players playing for them. And they went up against their bitter rivals, the Detroit Red Wings, in the conference finals. And it was a hard-fought series. Those 2 teams do not like each other, especially back then. But Colorado pulled through in 6 games to get to the finals. Now we're at the finals. We got the 4th seed in the East and the 2nd seed of the West. Colorado versus Florida Panthers. To put it pretty plainly, Colorado dominated the series. They actually swept it. Florida didn't win a single game. They beat them 3-1 in the first game, 8-1 in the second game, which was it was a rough game to watch, and 3-2 in the third game, and 1-0 in the fourth game. Now that fourth game, when Colorado won the Stanley Cup, was kind of a crazy game. It went into 3 overtimes. Now, if you don't know much about hockey, there's 3 periods in a game, and so adding on those 3 overtimes, that's like playing 2 hockey games without stopping. So this game, like while Colorado had amazing forwards and Florida had amazing defense, it kind of just, those cancel each other out, and this was all about the goalies. I mean, these 2 goalies played 2 hockey games pushed together, and only 1 goal went in, and that was when Uwe Krupp shot the puck from kind of a weird angle back towards the back end of the offensive zone and just slid in 5-hole on John Van Wiesbrook. So it was all about goalies. Patrick Waugh had 63 saves for a shutout. Now, usually a high scoring game where a lot of shots happen has like 35 to 40 shots on goal. So this was 63 shots on goal in one game that he stopped all of them. He didn't let a single goal in. Now, John Van Wiesbroek, he did his best to keep his team in it. He stopped 55 out of 56. So both of these goalies kept the puck out of the net the whole game. They were just determined, all until the 6th period of play, when finally Uwe Krupp scored the goal. So I hope you enjoyed that story as much as I enjoyed telling it. I'm going to be doing 2 more of these this week for sure. I'll probably do different sports. But yeah, get outside, try and recreate, go and look up Uwe Krupp's goal and try and recreate that if you have a hockey net at your house. Have a great day, guys.